I think we'll go ahead and get started with this next panel. This is super exciting. We have sports success stories, Internet of Things, safety, and smart cities. So we're really excited about this next panel. Lots of sports today. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go ahead and introduce yourself and everyone. I want to introduce everyone to Chris Foreman. He will be the moderator and presenter for this particular panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Love. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We have a very bright light we're looking into. It's like very hard to see anybody's faces here. So forgive us if you're, don't even try to raise a hand if to be called on. We'll actually probably save questions, if you have questions, until after the session here. A couple of our speakers have to run, but a couple will stick around and take questions as well. But thank you all for joining. Our topic is sports success stories, IoT, safety, and smart cities. We started the day hearing from the CEO of the Paris Olympics talking about, one of the largest, sporting events in the world, and getting that sort of international perspective, which we'll be seeing and hearing much more about the next Olympics happening in Los Angeles in 2028. But we have some great panelists here to also talk about events, and particularly sporting events in our own cities in the U.S., and I'm excited to hear from them today. So, as Love said, my name is Chris Foreman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Marketplace.city. We're a longtime partner of FIRA and of Smart Cities Expo USA, and also we actually launched our company in 2017 at the Smart City Expo World Congress in Barcelona. So we're an 8-year-old company based in the United States that provides market research on technology for local government to help accelerate the acquisition and purchasing of that technology. So we work with cities and counties across the globe, but primarily within the U.S. on all of their purchasing decisions as it relates to technology. So I will start with the beautiful lady on my left, Kim, to give you a brief introduction and background in your role, and then we'll go down the list from there.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Kimberly LaGrue. I'm the Chief Information Officer of the City of New Orleans, excuse me, and also the president of the Cities Today Institute. Cities Today convenes sessions with government leaders in the local space, and we help them talk about and develop solutions that benefit their organizations and their communities. So we're a smart city think tank, and we support the local the nation's CIO community in digital transformation. In the city of New Orleans, I lead all smart city services for the city of New Orleans. That does include our police and fire departments, our public safety teams, and we just hosted the 2025 Super Bowl.
Yeah, my name is Jumbi. I'm in charge of global business development for NVIDIA's smart cities and spaces business. So we work with cities globally on smart city initiatives, especially AI technology, and also large public spaces like stadiums, airports, seaports, etc.
And my name is Brian O'Neill. I'm a Deputy Fire Chief with the Clark County Fire Department, and lead the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and function as the county manager or county emergency manager for Clark County. Just for a little bit of perspective, Clark County is approximately 7,000 square miles. The Clark County Fire Department covers about half of the Las Vegas Valley, including the Las Vegas Strip, Allegiant Stadium, T-Mobile Stadium, and all the way down to the state line in California and Arizona. Run about 160,000 calls a year with 800 personnel, 5 battalions, and 32 fire stations. In addition to that, I was the communication chair for Super Bowl 58 working group, which was held 2 years ago at Allegiant Stadium, and then also for the Formula One races in 23 and 24.
Great, thank you very much. So there's so many things that we could talk about with respect to your cities, your counties, your technologies you leverage, and there's so many other considerations that you have that are ongoing. But with the focus specifically on large events and sporting events in particular, we're very fortunate to have the city and the county that hosted the last two NFL Super Bowls, right? And most recently in New Orleans, and then 2 years ago in Las Vegas, where Clark County is. I'm very curious to get us to set the stage for us today, that when you have one of these large events coming in, what does readiness look like? What sort of resources need to be mobilized in order to prepare the city or the county for this large event to enter into your city? Who are some of those key partners that are doing that mobilization and working with you to just sort of set the stage for this event coming to town?
Okay. Well, you said a word that we are very familiar with, readiness, right? Brian and I share responsibilities in our cities and do very similar work. Readiness is a word that we use very often. Take readiness and layer on top a private sector organization and its own concepts of what success looks like, and that's about where you have us in the space of preparing for a major sporting event. Readiness is what we do all the time, whether it's for hurricanes or other public safety events or other events in the city. In a city like New Orleans, readiness was preparation for Mardi Gras, which happened 2 weeks after Super Bowl, which is how we got to Super Gras. And for New Orleans, Super Gras was a one-year planning period that allowed us to be prepared or to consider how we would host 2 major events in a very short period of time, and then overlay a terrorist attack on January 1, and you get to the highest level of preparation that we've done, I think, in 10 years in the city like that, in the city of New Orleans. But it really is about preparing for every scenario that could come about and understanding what our priorities would be in that very scenario and what would be most essential to supporting our residents, to the success of that event, and then keeping everyone in our community safe. That's my contribution to that.
Yeah, I would just say when we have those Tier 1 events that come in, we typically have big events, concerts and things like that every day in Las Vegas, and every weekend there's a major event. But we have some that are outliers to that, which are the Tier 1 events like presidential debates and presidential visits and Super Bowls, and so that involves engaging all of our stakeholders, bringing in all of our emergency support functions to support our emergency operations centers, and really doing a thorough risk evaluation and working through contingencies for whatever may occur. And besides those 2 events, we also host EDC twice a year, which is about 400,000 visitors to each one of those.
So when you're sort of planning for these events, we talked about, outside of the panel here, the concept of like an operations center, like a centralized operations center. Tell me, how does that sort of come together within your organization? What are some key considerations to doing it? What value does that bring to the key stakeholders? But also, how are you able to incorporate both public sector partners but also private sector partners into that as well?
Yeah, so in our emergency operations center, we have most of our public agencies represented. We're able to work through any sort of emergency that comes up. The field-based resources are handling problems while we're working with the policy group for the county of how we're going to manage problems. Technology is a huge consideration because we're maintaining accountability for resources. We're maintaining communication across all the different agency department operation centers. And so we need our EOC to be really well connected. We need to have virtual links set up with all the different departments that support us. And we need to make sure that the private sector, are either the event hosts or promoters, are represented as well to deal with any sort of public information need or any other emergency that arises.
Yep, and we considered a centralized command for that very reason. While the city has a need to stay connected in the emergency response framework, what we did know was that our event managers had a different set of expectations, and they had their own partners. Fortunately for us, those communications partners are the same ones that are important to the city of New Orleans, and we thought it would be a great idea and the most effective way for us to manage all of those things was to centralize those operations. And I'll tell you, it takes a lot of technology to do that. It takes a lot of coordination to do it, but we found that common goal and that mission to maintain good communication, have all of our partners in one place, was a driver to bring a good intersection of the public and private partnerships and our partners, as well as the NFL's partners, into a central space. And sharing information, I thought we had the best shot at being effective and managing that event and making sure that the communication went off without a hitch. And this is largely about mobility. We're mobilizing large amounts of people into our space and out of our space. Our event planners are bringing in logistics weeks out and taking weeks to load those things in and out of our cities. So the communication is just one of the most essential parts of that. And having a command center is always about, the nature of that is communication and collaboration and having everyone in the same space so that we could build an effective response. So that idea, I think Brian and I talked about it, and we kind of did the very same thing, taking cue from frameworks that already exist for us. Our EOC, our Emergency Operations Centers, they already existed. Peeling out the communications function and sitting it in a separate place just made the most sense. It was something that they could all relate to. So we just had to take our common operations and then overlay it with the technologies and the things that made us responsive to build what came out of what we did for our Super Bowl, and sounds like the same thing Brian did for his.
You know, one thing I'd add is one of the things that they did in the Paris Olympics, which actually was incredibly valuable, to make sure everyone was in the same page with regards to what was where. They actually created a digital twin of the whole Olympic village so that everyone, you know, the sponsors, the organizers, the IOC, everyone kind of knew literally where every sign was before they did the planning. And the other thing, sorry, in terms of technology now that's possible to do is to even take, we were just talking about this earlier, all the plans and procedures and build like, you know, what we call, think of it as a small version of ChatGPT, but only on the data that you provided. You know, it's called a RAG, a Retrieval Augmented Generation System, which essentially takes all the plans and procedures, centralizes it. So if someone needs to ask, shoot, where do I evacuate? They don't necessarily have to look up something to see what the evacuation plan was. They can just ask it in natural, you know, question in natural language. And one step further, we were talking about this earlier, it can actually do it in, you know, 60 different languages if you wanted to. So for events like, you know, FIFA, there can be people from all over the world. That capability that AI provides could be pretty valuable.
Yeah, we see that it seems like these events create such an immense sort of data integration, data analysis opportunity, right? So I was curious if you all capitalized on that opportunity at all to test certain technologies, like the RAG technology that Jumbi's talking about, or business intelligence or AI, to, you know, because there's all this data being generated, but also this data coming in from multiple third parties, right? Be it the event organizer themselves, whether it's F1 or if it's the NFL, or federal partners that are coming in and activating because the president decides that he's going to attend the event as well. So now you have the federal data coming in, local, regional. So the fact that you have all these different entities that are participating, generating data, harnessing data, does it present an opportunity to use some of these new technologies to interpret it and to draw conclusions from that data?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that we try to line up right at the beginning is what is the capability of the app that's being created. Every event now has an app. And we found that during Formula One, the app was downloaded and used 116,000 times that T-Mobile had created. And they're tracking that through their fan zone, right? So now that we know that the app is there, what information can we put onto it for emergency access of people? You know, can we track people? Can we direct them to where we need them to go? can we direct them to first aid stations or hydration? If we're having a concert somewhere and it's really hot outside, do they know how to rehydrate? Those are all the things that we're trying to continually push through, and that requires that we work with the promoters to get that information into their app.
Yeah, that's a great example of being able to sort of push some of your data out to other third-party apps. Kim, you mentioned that there was an opportunity to either integrate cyber data, cyber and risk data, related to sort of attempted either intrusions or penetrations to networks that were being used to manage the event. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we took a cybersecurity focus to that and centralized our intelligence on that level. AI is such a force multiplier, and sometimes the best use of it is to do exactly what you said, Jumbi, which is to produce or aggregate all of the data and let it produce outcomes in a very quick and efficient manner. And that's kind of what we did for us with a limited cybersecurity team and having requirements coming from the NFL, from the federal government on how we should manage our cybersecurity intelligence, bringing that into an AI platform and aggregating those intelligence briefings, the things that we were learning, the threat landscape. We were able to use AI to help us manage and on a daily basis understand the threats in our landscape and how we would respond to them. Having everybody in the same room, the equivalent of that from a technology perspective was feeding all of that into one AI system, and we were able to feel comfortable about our level of cybersecurity.
Great. I'm interested in hearing more about the private sector involvement. What does a good private sector partner look like as it relates to managing these events? Whether you can give an actual example, please do. Feel free to share. Because I think, obviously, the private sector is looking to get involved. They're looking at this, at these potential events to highlight and showcase their technologies in hopes that it creates a bit of a pilot that might extend to a larger deployment, a larger usage of this technology. And the fact that these events only happen, once in a while, creates an opportunity for new testing and new piloting. So do you have an example of like what good partnership looks like? And Jumbi, as you also from industry, where have you had sort of success in sort of partnering and providing support to the government customers that are hosting these events?
Yeah. So a good partner for us is one that understands our business is able to provide solutions. First and foremost, we have had a couple of good case studies. We use our events here because they're more controlled than an incident, right? Because we've already planned it and we know what's going to occur. And so we've used them in the past for things like accountability software, seeing how well we can track a Z-axis if we have people on the ground that show up as little dots on a screen, but we know that we have teams that are inspecting and setting off fireworks on New Year's Eve, where we have 400,000 people on the ground down below, and we have teams of law enforcement and firefighters taking care of the problem on the ground. Can we also track the fire inspection crews that are up on the rooftops? So we've worked through that. We've had EOC improvements where we've gone to our partner agencies, our partners from FirstNet, and said, hey, look, your closest cell tower is here and it's constantly getting the copper pulled out of it and it's not going to work for us, and we have some pretty big stuff coming up, so we want you to put a DAS in our building, right? So now we have 2 radios at our headquarters station, antennas distributed throughout the building, and we have coverage throughout, and we don't have to worry about that fiber getting ripped out of the tower across the street. So those are some of the case studies that I have.
For us, in the cybersecurity space, ideally a partner and a good partnership is private sector partners that are willing to work with other private sector partners are the best partners for us to have. So some operate in a supporting role, but we had a partner, Palo Alto, came in and said, we'll run this proof of concept for you and we'll stay with you from before Super Bowl through Mardi Gras, and we will help you with your intelligence sharing. But that did mean that all of our telecommunications partners had to be involved, our federal cybersecurity partners had to be involved, and that proof of concept brought a lot of down to the minute cyber intelligence to our group. It was a force multiplier because our staff was small, but it has left a footprint for us, and we have a model for communicating and then moving from there into an execution phase in government and in cities where there are already resource constraints. A good partnership is one where someone says, I'll step up and help here. I understand the objectives, and for us that was really instrumental. And then having all of them in that space and using foundational tools like AI and understanding where those things and how those processes come together was really important for us. So it was a great partnership, and we're moving forward with that. But cybersecurity, there are so many partners in that landscape, and if they had all decided to be competitive or exclusive or say that this needs to be proprietary and we're the only ones who could talk or are the only ones who could represent you, I don't think those are effective ways for cities to manage those large events. So I did appreciate how we were able to bring them all to the table.
Yeah, we actually partner with a lot of events, a lot of stadiums, etc. But just to be clear, NVIDIA doesn't actually sell applications to end users. We actually have a very large ecosystem. So just in the smart cities business, I work with about 1,300 companies that have built solutions that have been deployed in stadiums, airports, cities globally. So we have a pretty good view of what's scalable, what's efficient, what's works really well, what doesn't work really well. So you can almost use us like consultants to say, okay, you know what? Here's the art of the possible in terms of all this AI. But tell us what exactly your pain points are. What critical issues are you trying to address? And then we'll suggest partners in our ecosystem that either have solutions off the shelf that you can use, or that'll build solutions for you, because a solution exactly like the one you want doesn't exist out there. So we really come in more as consultants to these events, and everything. I mean, if you think about a sporting event, safety, security, operational efficiency, people movement, even sports analytics, analyzing what players are doing on the field, etc. I mean, there's just such a huge range of AI applications out there, and you may not know what you don't know, so we'll just make you aware of it.
Yeah, I'm very curious about if you're able to observe any modern technologies, new innovative technologies that are actually happening inside of the event itself. So there's maybe some knowledge sharing or learning or takeaways that you get from seeing the event organizers and how they run their events. Because that's one thing is that you obviously are managing this entire landscape and being the host city or host county to an event, but then there's got to be some element of knowledge sharing and training and knowledge transfer that happens because this this really huge event comes and happens in your town. Do you have examples of that, of either being able to learn from the event that's being operated and what you're observing, or even bringing in other partners that might be a regional partner or a state partner or somebody to come and witness and experience what you're doing while you're managing this event, so that they might take something away and leverage that down the road?
Sure. I think the biggest technology that we're seeing that event promoters are utilizing is crowd management tools. I think just being able to direct people, and then also being able to see the precursors to crowd crush and panic and things like that when people have to quickly move out of the way of something, they're able to key in on that really quickly. Our city infrastructure is designed for the city-wide, not necessarily the venue itself. And so some of those venues that we have there are really well connected that way.
I see that our partners, our event partners, they do this over and over again in place after place. So their learnings were really important for us. They already knew what needed to be the priority. So them sharing those priorities with the city allowed us to think differently about how we wanted to respond, what a hardened response looked like, how we could improve our stadium, because they were talking to the very same partners that we have about what good connectivity looked like, or what good event management looked like. They understood crowds, they knew what the expectations were, and their vendors and those partners already had models that we could pick up, that we could adopt as a city. And I think those sustain us because they've done this before. We are learning. We've now managed our crowds differently. We've implemented new technologies. We know what to ask of our AI and our smart capabilities. And now we have a different way that we can manage. I thought it was really effective to be working in the space with them.
Yeah, I'm curious what some of those technologies are that you see might have a lasting usage within your organization. So you mentioned like crowd management. Okay, great. That's crowd management being a very advanced and dynamic landscape. Where would you see that being applied in other events or in other situations within the county, but also are there other technologies that you did pilot maybe outside of crowd management, but just where you pilot in general, you see a lasting usage of those technologies down the road?
Yeah, we're kind of in the crime prevention world a little bit because Las Vegas is a UASI city and we get a lot of funding for counterterrorism activity, but we're quickly transitioning into more of a life safety and protection role. And I think a couple technologies that are being implemented right now, there are drone as first responder. So utilizing the network that's been built out over the last few years hosting events, utilizing that to connect IoT devices for both drones and drones are being flown about 300 times a month right now, independently of any sort of operation across Las Vegas, just to get eyes on. They're being launched in certain conditions. So when we have shot spotter alerts where gunshot indicators are being heard, we're also launching drones to get eyes onto whatever that issue is. That's also a technology that's being rolled out into buildings as well as schools and public assembly buildings. We have now a very robust camera system with connected cameras, with ALPR sensors or license plate reading devices and technology. We're recovering over 60 stolen vehicles a month and getting hundreds of detections for stolen vehicles, not just on license plate, but make, model, color, description, type of sticker on the bumper. Those cameras are able to sense in on those things and see them traveling. They can now do pursuits without having any sort of actual person looking at the vehicle, just through cameras and through the city being connected in that way of managing the public safety risk. So yeah, there's a lot of technology that's being pushed in, and Las Vegas is a really new city, sort of, to growth, and so we've had these technology changes have come just really, really quickly.
We started in the transformation space a good while ago. New Orleans did. We were one of the first cities to make our data open and transparent. So we put things out there. We had a real-time crime center back in 2015, 2016. So we were using cameras and ALPR data a long time ago. Where we are now is where AI is taking us, right? It is better use, better application of the technologies we already had. And something you mentioned today, Jumbi, that was really where we are headed is using that very same data to translate information. What we learned from our federal partners and through the new risks and the events that we were facing was we needed to be able to translate information into other languages and to absorb information. So aside from a digital twin and building a footprint that is also geographically based, it is being able to disseminate information quickly across the landscape of languages. Those AI tools will be very effective for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, technology, especially just talking about video, for example, is now at a point where it used to be the case that, let's say you wanted to do some, intelligent traffic stuff. You put up traffic cameras, LPR cameras. Then you want to do some safety security stuff. You put up cameras for those. Then you want to do some crowd management or, fan experience kind of stuff in a venue. You have for those. Now, in the video world even, there's a video language model where you put, you can coordinate among agencies, put up cameras where you want to get information from, and it can collect pretty much all the information, all of the above, using the same sensor. So it's a large video language model which you can then go and query and say, show me every time an accident happens, or show me every time more than 10 people gather here, or whatever information you want about the physical world, you can get out of the same sensor. So we now have the technology to do that. So there's going to be a lot more coordination between all these different agencies to make sure that they're at least collecting the information, and then they can figure out how to share it.
Excellent. Well, we've passed our time limit for the session today. It was a quick one, right? Went by fast. Thank you very much to our panelists. I think this is just one example about how our governments are able to share information about these experiences for others to really take home with them. So I encourage you, if you have an event coming up in a city somewhere around the country, around the world, please reach out to your peers in other cities that have done this before, but also to tap into your industry partners because they're actually working with cities and counties and governments every single day and seeing these problems repeat over and over again. They have a lot of insights to take away from this as well. And so it's great to get that sort of that depth of a point-in-time experience of, say, a city like New Orleans or a place like Clark County in their experience, but also someone like Jumbi who has that broad, oversight as to what, the aggregate amount of, cities and counties, and I think a lot of our industry partners have that type of insight. So I'd like to give our panelists a round of applause and thank you for joining us today. And everyone have a great show. Thank you.